When did a friend's lies cost you everything you were fighting for? I literally just found out the reason I might be losing my job at the mall kiosk. The job I desperately need to cover my mom's assisted living costs is because my supposed friend Mark Richardson, 48M, has been feeding lies to the corporate office, and it all traces back to his psychotic sister-in-law. I'm sitting here in the break room smelling like cheap synthetic oils and despair, and my phone says it's 2:17 a.m. I feel like I'm going to vomit up the lukewarm Taco Bell I scarfed down earlier. I don't even know where to start with this dumpster fire. TBH. I'm William Park, 47M. I'm exhausted, physically, mentally, emotionally. I've been working at the Pure Essence essential oil and luxury candle kiosk in the middle of the Westfield Mall for 2 years, 8 months now. Yeah, I am 47 and selling diffusers to bored suburban moms. It's not glamorous, but the commission is decent, and it's flexible enough that I can still manage being a full-time caregiver for my mother, who is currently fighting an absolute nightmare with Alzheimer's in apartment 3B at the facility. My rent for my own beat-up place is $1,247 a month, and the facility costs are astronomical, so every penny I make at that little mall island matters. Every single shift. The drama started slowly, like mold growing behind drywall, and I passed me was such an idiot for ignoring it. It all revolves around Mark Richardson, 48M, my colleague who is technically my shift supervisor, and the obsessive, frankly terrifying situation with his sister-in-law, Heather. Mark and I have worked together since I started. We used to grab Starbucks coffee sometimes before the mall opened. Seemed like a decent guy, if a little passive-aggressive about his wife's family drama. Mark is married to Sarah, and Sarah has a sister, Heather. Heather is the problem. She's one of those people who believes essential oils can cure literal cancer, and she wants to turn the entire Pure Essence kiosk into her personal, unpaid therapy office. She's 50-something, drives a slightly battered 2018 Honda Civic, and thinks she's best friends with the CEO of our company. She's delusional, truly. About 6 months ago, Mark started leaning on me heavily. He told me he was having severe marital problems because Heather kept demanding access to the kiosk and was calling Sarah 27 times in 1 hour last Tuesday at 11:47 a.m. because we didn't stock her preferred brand of organic lavender. He was totally stressed. He mentioned his wife was threatening divorce, and he was even thinking of moving out of their house into his mom's place in Westfield. I felt terrible for the guy. I mean, who hasn't had family drama, right? I tried to be supportive, letting him vent while we restocked the $43.67 grocery bill equivalent of tea lights. He started asking me for favors. Hey William, could you just run this box of samples to Heather's house? It's on your way home. Hey William, could you just take the 5:30 p.m. shift on Friday? Heather hates me being here when she comes by because she thinks I'm sabotaging her favorite patchouli display. I know, red flag 1 million. Because I am genuinely a nice person, and because I was terrified of losing my job and desperately needed the consistent PTO accrual, I said yes every time. I was covering 8-10 extra hours a week for him. My feet were killing me. I wore out my favorite pair of New Balance shoes. I felt like I was running on 4 hours of sleep maximum every night, and I was chugging gas station coffee just to make it to the end of the shift. Then the other colleagues came into the picture, and trust me, they did not make it easier. First, there's Ann James, 27F. She's supposed to be the know-it-all colleague, and she leans into that identity hard. Ann is young, energetic, and literally lives on TikTok. She dresses like she's about to go to a music festival, not sell $60 diffusers. She owns 3 different Stanley Cups, carries an iPhone 14, and her energy is exhausting. Ann thinks she knows everything about sales, even though she's been here less than a year. She constantly tells me how I should be leveraging social media and optimizing the customer experience. She cornered me last week when I was desperately trying to calculate how much I owed the plumber, $85 charge, for the leaky faucet in my apartment. Honestly, William, Ann said, adjusting her AirPods, which she insists on wearing even when customers are talking, you are so old school. You spend way too much time doing inventory. Mark told me you spent 2 hours on Monday logging the cedarwood. We need to be performing. Like, what is your conversion rate on the new Energize line? You haven't even tried the new Instagram filter for the spring scents. I felt my eyes start to twitch. And I was doing inventory because Mark was outside dealing with Heather, who was having a meltdown about the lack of Himalayan sea salt lamps, and just shrugged literally with her whole chest. Well, that's Mark's problem, but in GL you look tired, maybe take a sick day. Mark said you've used up almost all your PTO anyway. That was the first time I felt that little stomach drop. I hadn't used any sick days. I save my PTO religiously for when I need to take mom to doctor's appointments. I had 47 hours of PTO banked. What are you talking about? I have plenty of PTO, I said, trying to keep my voice even. Oh, she said, scrolling rapidly through her phone. Mark put in some notes about you taking extended leave to deal with personal issues in February. You know, when you were covering all his closing shifts, he said he processed the PTO forms himself. I just assumed you knew. I felt the blood drain from my face. February was when I had covered nearly 3 weeks of Mark's closing shifts so he could deal with his wife and Heather. I was devastated but also weirdly numb. I wanted to scream, but we were right next to the Cinnabon and I didn't want to cause a scene. That never happened, I managed. I worked those shifts. Mark asked me to cover them, and just gave me that condescending 27-year-old pity look. Okay, William, whatever you say, just don't let it affect your sales performance. We all need to be bringing it. Like, follow me on TikTok, BTW. I walked away and immediately checked the internal HR portal on the dusty laptop in the kiosk. Sure enough, 3 days of PTO, totaling 24 hours, had been marked as used personal leave in February. The approval stamp was Mark's. I was shaking, full body shaking. I realized Mark hadn't just asked me to cover his shifts, he had manipulated me into working his shifts and signing off on my own PTO so he could double dip on paid time off or something even more messed up. The disrespect. The absolute disrespect. I had to confront him, but I needed a clear head, which I haven't had since roughly 2019. The next shift I worked was with Victoria Foster, 26F. Victoria is the Instagram influencer wannabe. She spends 90% of her shift trying to get the perfect lighting on her new Talenti Gelato flavor review for her Instagram story. She carries an expensive camera and is constantly adjusting her ring light, which takes up valuable retail space. She literally lives and breathes for likes. She's always wearing clothes that cost way more than she makes, and she complains constantly about the mall Wi-Fi speed when she tries to upload her content. Victoria is usually oblivious to the internal drama, but she is hyper-aware of Mark because he gives her the prime schedule spots, the ones with the most foot traffic, so she can film people reacting to her candle-sniffing reviews. I was counting out cash for the deposit. We had a decent Tuesday, $347 in sales, and Victoria was complaining loudly about a guy who tried to return a broken diffuser. He was like totally gaslighting me, Victoria whined, reapplying bright pink lip gloss. He said, "You're being dramatic and you're too sensitive," and I was just trying to explain that the return window closed 30 days ago. Mark totally would have backed me up. Mark is such a good manager. I looked up from the cash register. Mark is not our manager, Victoria, he's the shift supervisor. Same thing, she said dismissively. Anyway, he was telling me earlier that corporate is doing a huge review of the staff and they are looking to trim the fat, you know, like people who don't align with the brand aesthetic. She glanced pointedly at my slightly rumpled uniform shirt. What exactly does that mean, Victoria? I asked, my voice tight. I mean just that he said there were some performance issues with people who can't handle the client demands. She paused dramatically, then went back to checking her TikTok notifications. She had 47 new ones. Oh, and he said Heather really appreciated the huge discount you gave her on those 6 bottles of Sleepy Time spray last week. She told him you authorized a 50% friends and family rate because she helps manage the inventory. My jaw literally dropped. Cartoon character jaw drop. I wait, what are you saying? I never gave Heather a discount, ever. She argues every time I scan something. Oh really? Victoria said, looking momentarily distracted from her phone. Mark showed me the system log. It said William Park authorized the discount. He even mentioned it's part of why corporate is questioning your judgment and adherence to policy. You know, like giving away product for free. I felt that wave of nausea hit again. Mark wasn't just stealing my PTO, he was sabotaging my record to cover his own butt with his nightmare sister-in-law. Heather was likely demanding free product and Mark was forcing me to foot the bill or take the corporate heat. He was backstabbing me to protect himself from his wife's family drama. I realized everything Mark had been telling me was a manipulation tactic. After all I've done for you, William, he'd whine, you're the only person who puts up with me. No, he was the only person who used me as a human shield. The next morning I woke up early around 6:00 a.m., my anxiety alarm clock going off in my chest. I couldn't eat. I tried to pour a bowl of Cheerios, but I literally couldn't swallow. I called my mom at the facility and she sounded okay, thank God, but the conversation only reinforced why I couldn't lose this job. That $1,247 rent needed to be paid and I had already taken out $200 from savings for an urgent dental bill. I walked into the kiosk that day determined to confront Mark. He was already there looking cheerful and utterly smug. He was wearing a ridiculously bright pink polo shirt, probably one his wife made him wear. "Morning, William, ready to crush some sales?" he chirped. I walked straight up to him, my hands shaking. I felt the physical symptoms of stress. Chest tight, vision blurry around the edges. "Mark, we need to talk about the PTO hours and the inventory discrepancies," I said, trying to project competence instead of the raw bowling rage I felt. He leaned in conspiratorially, lowering his voice. "Oh, William, not here, buddy. We have customers, you know. Besides," he dropped his voice further, "Heather is coming in today. She's bringing her friend from the Holistic Healing Center. They are massive buyers. I need you on your A game." "No, we talk now," I insisted. "Why did you use my PTO hours for the closing shifts I covered for you? And why is the system saying I authorized a 50% discount for Heather? That's stealing." Mark's face didn't change, but his eyes went cold like the Talenti Gelato section in the freezer aisle. "Watch your tone, William," he said, using that slow, patronizing tone that makes me want to key his beat-up Toyota Corolla. "I don't know what Anne or Victoria told you. They are always gossiping, aren't they? They're being dramatic. You're overreacting." Classic gaslighting phrases. I realized later, past me was just numb. "Mark, I saw the system log. The math isn't mathing. I worked those shifts. And if I lose this job because you're covering your sister-in-law's entitlement issues, I swear to God," he cut me off, leaning across the display case filled with expensive bath bombs. "Listen, buddy. Heather is very sensitive and she knows the corporate manager personally. She has mentioned a few times that the staff is lacking professionalism. I have been protecting you, but you are clearly too stressed, maybe due to your personal issues." He tapped the cash register pad. "I simply adjusted the schedule and the inventory to make sure everything looks smooth. And frankly, William, if you can't handle the heat of a retail environment, maybe this isn't the job for you." He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "No one else would put up with you, William, especially not with the state you're in." The rage I felt, I saw red. This man who I covered shifts for, who I listened to whine about his marriage, was now accusing me of being unprofessional and stealing, all while protecting his psychotic relative. I wanted to smash the $200 air purifier display. But then Mark took out his own iPhone, a Samsung Galaxy. Actually, he's an Android loyalist, go figure, and started typing rapidly. In fact, he said, still smiling, I think we need to put you on immediate administrative leave pending review of the inventory issue. I'm texting corporate now. I stammered, I wait, what, you can't do that. Oh, but I can, he said, pocketing his phone. Effective immediately, don't worry, I'll take care of your shift today. Go home, William, relax. You look awful. I knew what this was. This was constructive dismissal. He was creating a hostile work environment, falsifying records, and now illegally suspending me without cause, all because he was terrified of his obsessive in-law. He was trying to push me out so I would quit and he wouldn't have to face an HR investigation. I was devastated, but also weirdly clear-headed. My hands stopped shaking. I took off my uniform vest and threw it on the counter, narrowly missing a display of cinnamon sticks. Fine, Mark, I said. I am going, but this is not over. I felt the embarrassment radiating off me. People passing by were staring, moms with strollers, teenagers going into Claire's. Victoria, who was nearby trying to film her what I eat in a day content, had her camera running, capturing the whole thing. As I walked away, feeling numb, defeated, and worried about how I was going to pay the full $1,247 rent solo next month, I heard Mark on the phone, clearly calling Heather. Hey, Heather, great news, he said loudly, making sure I could hear him. William is gone. Yes, I handled it. You can come by anytime. And don't worry, that shipment of organic patchouli you wanted, it's all yours. I got to the edge of the mall and felt like crying, but I was so angry the tears just evaporated. I needed a plan. I needed to fight this, but I couldn't fight Mark alone. He clearly had corporate's ear thanks to Heather. I remembered Victoria had been filming. Victoria, the Instagram influencer wannabe who needs clicks like she needs oxygen. If I could get her on my side, she could be useful. She probably had Mark on video authorizing that fake discount or admitting to something. I texted her even though she usually ignores me. V, you were filming when Mark suspended me. Do you still have that footage? A moment later, the 3 dots appeared. I held my breath. Victoria, OMG, yes, I got the whole fight. It's totally viral content. But Mark just texted me and said if I share anything, he'll tell everyone I am not really an influencer and that I bought 10K of my followers. And GL, I'm scared. Me, please, Victoria, this is my livelihood. I can't afford to be constructively dismissed. Victoria, look, I can't risk Mark. But TBH, I have wanted to tell everyone about this psychotic in-law situation for months. It's insane. I even know someone who knows Sarah, Mark's wife. We went to high school together. My heart started racing. Wait, mutual friends, this wasn't just about HR. This was about exposing Mark's manipulation to the people who mattered most, his wife, Sarah. If Sarah knew Mark was using William me as a financial and professional scapegoat just to avoid dealing with her sister Heather, she might take action. Me, who is it? Who knows Sarah? Victoria, her name is Chloe. She's Sarah's best friend. She told me Sarah is basically done with Mark because of Heather's antics. Chloe says Sarah doesn't know about Mark using William and the discounts. That would push her over the edge. Me, can you tell Chloe what happened? Everything. The PTO, the discount, the constructive dismissal. Victoria, I can't, William. I'm too scared of Mark outing me. But Chloe is coming to the mall tomorrow to meet up with me at the Starbucks on Main Street at 5:30 p.m. I stopped dead in my tracks. 5:30 p.m. Starbucks. I realized I couldn't confront Mark, but I could absolutely tell Sarah's best friend, Chloe, everything. If I couldn't go through HR, I would go scorched earth through his personal life. After all he'd done, after risking my income and my ability to care for my mother, Mark deserved the consequences of his actions. I typed out a message to Victoria, adrenaline flooding my system. Me, Victoria, please just tell me what color sweater Chloe is wearing. I'll take it from there. I will be at Starbucks tomorrow. Victoria texted back almost instantly. Victoria, green. She's wearing a huge green cable knit sweater. But William, you have to be careful. If Mark finds out, he'll literally fire me and then you'll never work retail again. I didn't respond to Victoria. I knew this was risky. I knew I was about to jump into the middle of Mark's toxic family drama. But I was done, just done. I was going to the Starbucks on Main Street tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. and I was going to tell Chloe everything, green sweater or not. But then, as I was walking out of the mall parking lot toward my beat-up Toyota Corolla, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Hello? A woman's voice, high-pitched and frantic, shrieked into the phone. Is this William Park? This is Heather. You are not going to that Starbucks tomorrow, are you? You are not going to talk to Sarah's friends. Mark told me you were causing trouble, and if you breathe a single word about the Cedarwood discount, I will make sure you lose everything. I know where your mother lives. Oh my God, I swear to you, I dropped my phone. I actually heard the high-pitched, frantic shriek, and then the part about knowing where my mother lives, and my heart slammed into my ribs so hard I thought I was going to pass out right there in the empty section of the parking lot between the Dillards and the loading dock. I snatched the phone back up. The call had disconnected. It was an unknown number. I couldn't breathe. I was sweating through my shirt even though it was maybe 40 degrees outside. I immediately called the assisted living facility, apartment 3B. I didn't tell the nurse exactly why, but I said I was concerned about unauthorized visitors due to a family dispute. I felt like a lunatic, but I had to do it. They said they would put a temporary block on non-emergency visits unless approved by me, and they would increase patrols on that wing. I hung up and sat in my beat-up Toyota Corolla just trying to regain some sense of reality. Heather was stalking me. Heather knew where my mother lived. Mark had given his psychotic sister-in-law the information about my elderly, vulnerable, Alzheimer's-afflicted mother just to keep his life calm. The rage which had been boiling now turned into this cold, analytical, terrifying determination. Mark was gone. He was dead to me. This wasn't just about $1,247 rent anymore. This was about absolute protection. I drove home and didn't sleep. I just kept replaying the conversation in my head, seeing Mark's smug face when he told me I was on administrative leave. I went through my banking records, noting the direct deposit times. I started organizing every text I had from Mark asking me to cover shifts. I was building my case, so it's been 2 days since the Starbucks showdown. I hadn't heard from Victoria, which terrified me. I figured Mark had shut her down, threatening her social media standing. I was alone, scared, and extremely motivated. I had decided I wasn't just going to show up at Starbucks and ambush Chloe. That was amateur hour. Heather's call changed everything. I needed proof and I needed leverage. I decided to go early. I showed up at the Starbucks on Main Street at 4:45 p.m., 45 minutes before their scheduled 5:30 p.m. meeting. I ordered a large black coffee. I needed the caffeine jolt, TBH, and sat at a small table near the window, obscured slightly by a large fake plant. I needed to see Chloe arrive, confirm she was with Victoria, and then find the right moment to strike. I was literally shaking in my sneakers. At 5:05 p.m., Victoria walked in. She was wearing a ridiculously expensive-looking faux fur vest and carrying her ring light in a giant tote bag. She looked nervous. She immediately sat at the big circular table in the corner, clearly the designated meeting spot. At 5:27 p.m., Chloe walked in. She was maybe early 40s, clearly Mark's wife's friend, meaning she looked normal, stressed, and completely over retail drama. And yes, she was wearing a thick, gorgeous green cable knit sweater. They started talking immediately. I couldn't hear everything, but I could hear snippets, loud laughter, the occasional curse word. I saw Victoria take out her phone and show Chloe something, scrolling rapidly. I just knew that Victoria was showing her the video of Mark constructively dismissing me. This was my chance. I took a deep breath, adjusted the collar of my jacket. I was wearing street clothes. Obviously, I was not going to show up in a pure essence polo, and walked over to their table. Victoria saw me first. Her eyes widened and she made that little gasp sound that TikTok influencers make when they are reacting to something dramatic. "William," she whispered, her voice laced with panic. Chloe looked up, clearly annoyed at the interruption. "Who is this?" she asked Victoria. I didn't let Victoria answer. I cut straight to the chase. "Chloe, I apologize for interrupting your coffee, but I have to talk to you about Mark and Heather. My name is William Park. I am the man Mark just illegally suspended from his job at the mall kiosk." Chloe looked stunned. She slowly set down her massive iced latte. "I don't know what you're talking about. Look, I am Sarah's friend." "I know," I said, keeping my voice low but firm. "And Sarah needs to know what Mark is doing. He is actively sabotaging my career, stealing my PTO, and falsifying records to cover up his sister-in-law Heather's obsession. And now Heather is threatening my mother." Victoria whimpered next to us. "William, I told you I can't be involved." "You are already involved, Victoria," I said, not looking at her. "You have the video evidence on your phone right now. Show Chloe the clip of Mark admitting he was adjusting my schedule and inventory to make sure everything looks smooth. Show her the part where he admits Heather knows the corporate manager." Chloe looked from me to Victoria, her expression changing from annoyance to disbelief and then to absolute horror. "Victoria, you have a video of this?" Chloe asked. Victoria surprisingly found her spine. Maybe it was the drama, maybe it was the potential viral content, or maybe she was just sick of Mark's garbage. "Yes," Victoria said, her voice small. "I recorded the whole thing. He was saying that William had personal issues when William was covering all of Mark's shifts." Chloe looked me dead in the eye. "Mark stole your PTO. 24 hours worth," I confirmed. "I saved that time for my mom's appointments. He falsified the log. He also forced me to authorize a 50% friends and family discount for 6 bottles of Sleepy Time spray and numerous cedarwood oils for Heather, then blamed the inventory loss on me. Corporate thinks I'm giving away product for free." Chloe grabbed Victoria's arm. "Show me the video, now." Victoria, clearly relishing the drama, pulled up the clip. They watched the 45-second clip of Mark leaning over the counter, wearing that garish pink polo shirt, smiling while he basically fired me and admitted he was adjusting the records. When the clip ended, Chloe took a shaky breath. "Oh my God, Sarah's going to lose it." She had no idea how bad this was. She thought Mark was just avoiding the kiosk to de-stress. She thought he was working harder. "He was working less," I stated. "I was working his shifts for free. He did it all because he's terrified of Heather. He would rather destroy my livelihood than face his sister-in-law or his wife." Chloe stared at me. "Heather called you?" I nodded. "Last night, she called me from an unknown number and threatened my mother. She knows where she lives. I had to contact the facility and put them on alert." "This is beyond retail drama, Chloe. This is harassment and potential physical threat." Chloe immediately pulled out her own phone. "I am sending this video to Sarah right now. No more waiting. This is insane. I am so sorry, William." "Thank you, Chloe," I said, feeling a tiny sliver of triumph and a massive wave of fear. "Just know that Mark and Heather are going to come after you and Victoria when this blows up. They already threatened Victoria's status and they just threatened my mom. Be careful." I left the Starbucks before they could process what happened. I didn't want to be there for the aftermath. I walked back to my car, my hands still shaking, but this time the shaking felt different. It felt like the discharge of adrenaline after a massive necessary shock. I had done it. The fallout begins. Immediate update. The next day, Thursday, was pure chaos. I woke up to 17 missed calls and 42 texts. Most of them were from Victoria, who was now fully leaning into the drama, TBH. "Victoria, OMG, William, you will not believe." Sarah called Chloe crying at midnight. She watched the video 8 times. She is ripping Mark apart. "He stayed at his mom's house last night." "Victoria, Mark texted me like 40 times asking if I gave you the footage. I lied and said I deleted it. I think he believes me, but he is fuming." "Victoria, Chloe says Sarah is talking to a lawyer. She is done. Mark chose his sister-in-law over his own marriage, and then he screwed you over financially to protect himself. Sarah knows about the PTO now." This was exactly what I had hoped for. The resolution wasn't going to come through the dusty HR department. It was going to come through Sarah realizing her husband was a spineless, conniving manipulator. But the real update came from Ann James, 27F, the know-it-all colleague. Remember Anne who thought I was too old school and needed to leverage social media? And James text message thread, Anne William, are you okay? I just heard. Mark is not at the kiosk today. The regional manager Cynthia is here and she looks like she drank pure battery acid. Me, I'm home. Anne administratively suspended, remember? Anne, yeah, but Cynthia is asking about the inventory discrepancy and the PTO. Mark is blaming you obviously, but Chloe, Sarah's friend, just called the corporate office directly and said she has proof of Mark's financial malfeasance and emotional abuse. And GL, the kiosk is pure drama right now. Me, Chloe went full scorched earth. Good. And wait, this is the part you won't believe. Cynthia called me into the little back office. She asked me about the PTO and I told her what Mark told me, that you used it for personal issues. But then Cynthia showed me the original sign-off sheet. It was clearly Mark's handwriting forging your signature. My breath hitched. Mark forged my signature. That wasn't just HR violation, that was fraud. And Cynthia also asked me about the discounts. I said I had never seen you authorize a massive discount for Heather. I told her Victoria showed me the system log, but that I thought it looked weird, like Mark was accessing your credentials after hours. Me, Anne, why are you helping me? You always treated me like an annoying old man. And TBH William, Mark pulled the same crap on me 3 months ago with a Sunday closing shift. He said he paid me cash and then he just never did. When I pressed him, he said I was being dramatic and that I must have misplaced the cash. I just didn't want to rock the boat, so I let it go. But when I saw how he was treating you and the PTO thing, I knew he was a liar. He treats everyone who isn't Heather or Rich like garbage. I'm over it. I'm done with his toxic masculinity. I felt a rush of warmth. Anne, the know-it-all TikTok queen, was my unexpected ally. She was helping me not because she liked me, but because Mark had screwed her over too. Me, Anne, you are amazing, thank you. Do you know where the original discount authorization forms are kept, the physical ones? And they're usually in the locked safe under the cash register. Only Mark and Cynthia have the combination, but Mark left his safe key in the desk drawer. I can get it. Me, Anne, don't risk your job. And NGL William, I've already quit in my head. Have 3 other job interviews next week. I'll get those documents. This is for the content and for justice. Hash the escalation. Anne was my secret weapon. Within an hour, I received a series of blurry but legible photographs from Anne. They were the hard copies of the 3 PTO forms Mark claimed I authorized and the receipt for the Sleepy Time spray and Cedarwood discount. The PTO forms were signed, but the signature was clearly Mark's terrible, jagged handwriting, not my careful loops. The discount receipt had a handwritten note next to the 50% friends and family authorization that read, authorized by W. Park per shift supervisor instruction. This was gold. This was the paper trail. I immediately forwarded everything to Cynthia, the regional manager, along with a certified letter detailing the constructive dismissal, the PTO fraud, the inventory falsification, and the harassment from Heather. I included a detailed log of the 8-10 extra hours a week I covered for Mark. I also included the date and time of Heather's phone call threat. Cynthia called me back at 3:17 p.m. She didn't sound like she drank battery acid anymore. She sounded like she was performing damage control on an exploding oil refinery. Mr. Park, I have received your extensive file and I've reviewed the documents and James sent. I have also spoken to Ms. Richardson's friend Chloe, Cynthia said, her voice tight. We are launching an immediate full-scale corporate investigation into Mark Richardson. Effective immediately, he has been terminated for gross misconduct, fraud, and employee harassment. I slumped against my kitchen counter, terminated, just like that. What about my administrative leave, Cynthia? I asked, trying to sound professional despite the massive knot in my chest. We have reviewed the video footage provided by Victoria Foster. Bless that influencer wannabe, she finally delivered. And the circumstances of your suspension were entirely illegal and without cause. We are immediately reinstating your PTO hours, including the 24 hours falsely recorded, and we are paying you for the time you missed during the suspension. You are cleared of all inventory fraud allegations. We sincerely apologize for Mark Richardson's actions. So I still have my job. I asked, almost afraid to hope. Cynthia hesitated. That is slightly more complicated, Mr. Park. Given the deeply hostile work environment created by Mark and the continued severe harassment potential from Heather Foster, especially given the threat against your mother, we feel that forcing you back into the kiosk immediately would be irresponsible. My stomach dropped again. Oh God, here it comes. We are officially offering you a severance package equivalent to 6 months' salary, plus full payment of all accrued PTO, in exchange for signing a release agreement, Cynthia continued. This is not mandatory, but frankly, Mr. Park, we are terrified of litigation. We would rather pay you 6 months of pay to ensure you feel fairly compensated and avoid any further interaction with this situation. You would also receive a pristine employment recommendation from Pure Essence Corporate. 6 months salary, that was over $24,000. That would pay my $1,247 rent for nearly 20 months. It would cover mom's facility costs for nearly 5 months. Cynthia, I stammered, I need to look over the agreement, but that sounds like a fair resolution. It is, Mr. Park, she confirmed. Mark Richardson is no longer a factor. However, we cannot guarantee his sister-in-law will cease her obsession with the kiosk or with those who wronged Mark. We sincerely recommend you take the severance and focus on your caregiving responsibilities. I hung up the phone after arranging to receive the digital documents. I sat there in stunned silence. I had lost the job I desperately needed, but in its place I had 6 months of financial security, a clean slate, and a massive validation that I hadn't been crazy. Mark was gone. Hash the immediate aftermath and a new enemy. The problem was, just because Mark was gone didn't mean Heather was. Fast forward to Friday. I spent the day meeting with a lawyer just to review the severance agreement. Cost me $250, but worth the peace of mind. The lawyer confirmed everything was above board and recommended I sign it. I needed to go back to the mall one last time to pick up my personal things, my favorite chipped coffee mug, my new ergonomic mouse pad, my spare pair of New Balance shoes. I had told Cynthia I would go after hours around 8:30 p.m. when the mall was quieter. Anne was working the closing shift and she agreed to let me in. I walked into the familiar smell of synthetic oils and disappointment. The kiosk felt desolate. Anne was there looking genuinely happy to see me, which was a huge development in our relationship, TBH. "William, congrats," she chirped. "6 months pay, you totally won." "It feels more like a draw," I admitted, stuffing my mug into a paper bag. "I am unemployed, but Mark is miserable, so that's a win." "Mark is worse than miserable," Anne whispered, leaning over the candle display. "Sarah filed for divorce this afternoon. Chloe told me Mark is completely blindsided. He's staying at his mother's place and his mom is calling Sarah constantly." "Good," I said, feeling a satisfaction I hadn't felt in months. Just then my phone buzzed. It was Anne texting me from 3 feet away. Anne text, "William, don't look up," but Heather just walked up to the kiosk. "She looks homicidal." I froze. I slowly bent down, pretending to tie my shoe. I could hear high-pitched, angry breathing near the patchouli display. "Where is Mark?" Heather demanded, her voice cutting through the soft mall music. They were playing terrible elevator jazz. I wish I was joking. "Heather, Mark doesn't work here anymore," Anne said, sounding professional and incredibly calm. "Character development, maybe." "I know that, you little troll," Heather snapped. "I saw William's car in the parking lot. Tell me where he is. He is ruining Mark's life." I stayed low, hiding behind the $80 diffuser that looked like a space shuttle. "I don't know who William is, ma'am," Anne lied smoothly. "I haven't seen any former employees." Heather let out a sound like a wet cat being thrown into a blender. "Don't lie to me. I know you little employees stick together. You are lying to me just like Mark's spineless wife is lying to Mark about the divorce. I am going to call the corporate manager right now and tell her that you are hiding William and that he is stealing essential oils." "You should probably call the corporate manager," Anne said, her voice dripping with passive aggression that even I, a 47-year-old man, respected. "She's very busy dealing with Mark's termination for gross misconduct and fraud right now. Maybe you could ask her about that." The silence was deafening. I could practically feel the heat of Heather's fury radiating over the display case. "Mark was terminated," Heather finally whispered, her voice cracking. "That's a lie. He was the shift supervisor. He was in charge. He was terminated because he committed fraud and stole from the company," Anne replied, maintaining eye contact with a customer who was inexplicably sniffing a lavender spray bottle at 8:45 p.m. "And he manipulated William Park, who is a good man, into covering his shift so he didn't have to deal with you," Heather shrieked. It was loud enough that I heard footsteps approaching quickly. She grabbed a small bag of $4 tea lights and hurled them at Anne. They missed, hitting the glass countertop with a sad little clink. "This is all your fault, Anne, and Williams, I will find him. I know where his mother is. You can't hide him from me." I knew I couldn't stay hidden. If she left and I walked out, she would know Anne was lying. I had to face her, but I wasn't going to do it alone. I stood up slowly, making sure to be positioned directly behind Anne, using her as a human shield, TBH. "Actually, Heather," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "I'm right here, and I just signed a 6-month severance package because your brother-in-law was a fraudulent idiot who tried to use me as a shield to avoid dealing with your abuse." Heather locked eyes with me. Her face was contorted in pure, unadulterated fury. She looked exactly like Mark, just angrier. "You rat," she screamed. "You lied. You ruined Mark's life. He told me you were too unstable to work here. He told me you were giving away discounts because you were emotionally disturbed." "He was lying," I said simply. "And I recorded your call the other night, the one where you threatened my elderly mother. That audio has been forwarded to my attorney and to the corporate office. If you contact me, my family, or my former colleagues again, I will seek a restraining order, and I will press criminal charges for harassment." She actually took a step back. The immediate threat of legal action always seems to stop these types of people in their tracks. "You wouldn't dare," she sputtered. "Try me," I said, not backing down. I felt the physical symptoms of stress starting again. My chest was tight, but I held the gaze. Just then Victoria rounded the corner, camera running, clearly having followed the commotion. "OMG drama, Heather, why are you screaming at my coworker? Get out of here. This is my aesthetic." Heather saw the camera, panicked, and made a dash for the exit. She was gone within seconds. Anne and I stared at each other, then we both started laughing, hysterically, loudly. We were both half crying, half laughing right there in the middle of the empty mall kiosk. That, Anne wheezed, wiping a tear, was the most unprofessional, satisfying thing I have ever witnessed in my career, NGL. "I think I need a drink," I said. Victoria rushed over, still filming herself. "OMG. Did you see my reaction? Do you think I got the whole thing? My followers are going to eat this up. I'm going to title it, Obsessed In-Law Meltdown at the Pure Essence Kiosk Retail Tragedy." And that, believe it or not, was the end of the Pure Essence chapter of my life. So I'm back because you won't believe what just happened. A week later, it's been a week since the Starbucks showdown and the mall showdown. I signed the severance agreement. The $24K hit my bank account yesterday. Seeing that number made the last 3 months of stress feel slightly less suffocating. I'm unemployed, yes, but I'm not broke. I've spent the last few days binge-watching documentaries and eating frozen pizza. I still feel guilty about not actively working, but the 6-month grace period has allowed me to focus completely on my mother. She's doing okay, thankfully. I've increased her visiting hours. The drama hasn't stopped, though. Mark is truly spiraling. Anne updates me constantly. She hasn't quit yet, but she's interviewing aggressively. Apparently, Mark is texting everyone in the old group chat, claiming Sarah is having a midlife crisis and that I blackmailed corporate. No one is buying it. Victoria, bless her chaotic little heart, posted the video of Heather's meltdown. She muted the audio when Heather swore and blurred the faces of the random mall security guards who showed up, but she left Anne's and my voices clear. It went viral. she tagged it. She got 1.2 million views in 48 hours. The comments section is gold. People are calling Heather Lavender Karen and saying Mark is the weakest man alive. Corporate tried to make Victoria take it down, but she said, "It's my intellectual property NGL." She's leaning into the retail injustice angle and her follower count has skyrocketed. She actually sent me a gift card to Target as a thank you for the opportunity, I swear. But here's where the mutual friends thing truly played out. Sarah, Mark's now ex-wife, called me this morning. I hesitated to answer, but I figured I owed her the courtesy. "William, this is Sarah Richardson." She sounded exhausted. "Hello, Sarah," I said. "I called to apologize," she said simply. "I am so sorry for what my husband and my sister put you through. I saw the video. Chloe showed me the text. I saw the bank statements Mark was trying to hide. He confessed everything. He was using you as a literal financial cover to keep Heather happy and to avoid dealing with me." "It was a difficult time," I replied carefully. "Difficult is an understatement," she agreed. "He stole from you. He endangered your mother. He used your PTO that you desperately needed. I am filing for divorce on the grounds of emotional cruelty and financial malfeasance. My lawyer is sending you a statement confirming that Mark Richardson has relinquished all claims to his portion of the joint bank accounts, and that I personally am paying you back for the 24 hours of PTO he stole plus interest. I'm writing you a check for $780, just because I need to feel like I am doing something right here." I was stunned. "Sarah, you don't have to do that." "Yes, I do," she insisted. "You were an innocent casualty in my family's toxic nightmare." "Thank you, William. Thank you for telling Chloe, because I would have stayed married to that spineless man for another decade thinking he was stressed from work. You opened my eyes." I accepted the apology and the money. It felt real, genuine, and necessary. The money isn't the point, but the validation is everything. Ann and William, the post-kiosk update. A week and a half later, I met Ann for coffee, not at Starbucks, too much drama, but at a local, quiet, slightly expensive artisan coffee shop. Ann looked great. She wore actual professional clothes, not music festival attire. "I quit, William," she announced, sipping a ridiculously foamy latte. "I literally walked in yesterday and told Cynthia I accepted a remote sales job for a tech startup. My last day is Friday." "Congrats, Ann." "That's huge," I said. "Yeah, TBH, I would have stayed, but I can't handle the weird vibe now. Cynthia's trying to fix everything, but Mark ruined the culture. Anyway, Victoria is now the shift supervisor." I choked on my coffee. "Victoria, the influencer? Are you serious?" Ann shrugged, slightly smug. "Yeah, she knows the system, she's good with customers, and she's got a viral platform which corporate now realizes is free marketing for pure essence. She's surprisingly organized now that Mark isn't around to harass her. She even took down the ring light. Character development, maybe?" "Unbelievable," I muttered, shaking my head. The sheer irony. Ann leaned closer. "But here's the real kicker. Victoria is actually changing things. She insisted that all employees get a mandatory 2-hour paid training session on recognizing and reporting emotional abuse in the workplace, specifically referencing the obsessive in-law scenario. Cynthia actually signed off on it. She's leveraging her viral platform for good." I had to laugh. Victoria Foster using her thirst for followers to improve workplace safety. "Who saw that coming? Not me." "So what's next for you, William?" Ann asked, finally looking curious about my life. "I'm signing up for some online courses," I admitted. "I realized I need to get out of retail. I hate selling essential oils. I want to learn data analytics. I have 6 months to figure it out, and I'm going to use it. I'm actually going to use the time Mark stole from me to build a life where I don't have to worry about a psychotic sister-in-law threatening my retirement." Ann smiled. "Good for you, William. And you know, if you ever need me to testify against Lavender Karen, I have all the receipts and my new work computer." We talked for another hour and it was nice. I realized that Ann wasn't a know-it-all. She was just young, ambitious, and frustrated. She just needed a common enemy to see past her Stanley Cups and realize I was a person drowning in circumstance. A quiet resolution, and moving forward. It's been a month now. I still haven't found a new job, but I am actively studying. The initial stress has receded, replaced by a manageable anxiety about the future, which feels normal. I still have to check on my mom daily, and I have occasional flashbacks of Mark's face and Heather's shriek, but those moments are becoming less frequent. I finally changed the Wi-Fi password that Mark set up for me years ago when he helped me install the router. It felt symbolically huge. I learned a few things, TBH. First, nice people get used. I was so focused on being supportive, being a good guy, and being terrified of losing my job that I let Mark walk all over me. I allowed myself to be a human shield. I needed to learn to set hard boundaries, even if it meant being unsupportive. Second, sometimes the HR route is too slow. Going straight to the mutual friends and exposing the personal rot was the fastest, most effective path to consequence. Mark lost his marriage, his job, and his credibility, all because he couldn't handle his family drama without destroying someone else's life. He got what he deserved, and I didn't have to spend thousands on litigation to get it. Third, never underestimate the power of Gen Z and their desperate need for content. Victoria, the Instagram influencer wannabe, was the key to my freedom. Who knew? I still worry about Heather. I know she's out there. She's called me twice more from burner phones, but I just hang up immediately. My lawyer advised me to file a police report regarding the threat against my mother, which I did. That process is slow, expensive, and messy, but it's done. The threat of the obsessive in-law still exists, but the power dynamic has changed completely. She targeted me because I was vulnerable and isolated. Now I'm financially stable for 6 months, protected by legal boundaries and backed by a surprisingly decent cohort of former colleagues. Yesterday, I took my mother to a beautiful park. She was having a lucid day and we sat on a bench watching the ducks. She looked at me and said, "William, you seem less stressed. Did you finally quit that old job?" I did, Mom, I said, holding her hand. Good, she said, nodding sagely. That smell was giving me a headache. Now go live your life, kid. I'm 47 and I'm finally starting to live it. I'm eating ramen every day, but I'm sleeping peacefully. I still owe the plumber $85, but I can pay that now. I'm going to take the data analytics course. I'm going to reinvent myself. I'm closing this thread now. Thank you, readers, for listening to my descent into mall kiosk hell. It was real, it was messy, and it was absolutely terrifying. I still have bad days where I feel the exhaustion, but I keep reminding myself, I'm free from pure essence, free from Mark, and free from the tyranny of Lavender Karen. I think I'm gonna be okay.